My name's Mark Bate. I've been with EarthSoft going on 10 years now. I come from a background of consulting, so I think I can get an appreciation for how much of a time saver the EQuIS tools are, especially if I had them back when I was in consulting. We'll show some things that can save you a lot of time and also open new windows to analyze your data in ways that you may not have thought of before. And we'll even be showing you some things that no one's ever seen before with cross-facility querying for analytical data among multiple sites. Something that I remember people talking about back when I first interviewed with EarthSoft is something that they were trying to work on. So we finally are delivering on that cross-facilities. Just a couple of slides here. I'll probably cut this short. And these are even right now. We basically this is this is really old, this one. But we essentially, the EQuIS ArcGIS extension runs on an ArcMAP, which is their basic ArcGIS 2D mapping engine, as well as their 3D Analyst product called ArcScene. So the same EQuIS ArcGIS toolbar, you have that under the 2D or 3D program. There are three general categories for what we do with the extension. Number one, we connect you to your EQuIS data. We interface with the leading third-party environmental applications like Surfer, Rockware, GMS, and in some cases we'll even not just export, we'll round trip. So for instance, you can use Rockware to create a 3D fence where it goes out to Rockware, does its thing, and brings it back into the GIS. The beauty about this is that you don't have to know anything about Rockware. You just need to know how to sketch a line in the GIS. But we offer advanced options where you can, if you want to look at some of the geology algorithms for interpolating those surfaces, you can access that. Since a lot of people have Surfer around their office, I remember learning it in grad school, DOS version, and it's really great at doing contouring and gridding and the algorithms it offers, but it's not so GIS friendly. For instance, if you try to export the contours, there's no attribute value, so you can't color them basically. But we do little tricks to make it more GIS aware. We integrate with the 3D Analyst in ArcMAP, which we'll show you later. Go out into a whole separate application just to do 3D. You just toggle this 3D preview window within ArcMAP, and you can interact with the scene in right within ArcMAP without having to go out to another program. We do contaminant correlations, or these are essentially mapping of crosstab data, where you're looking at different chemical fingerprints. These can identify different sources of contamination, and they're really handy for litigation support, where you have different parties pointing the finger at who dumped what where, because you can usually see graphically things that you don't get in a table. And juries respond, we found, at least in consulting, to these pies. Here's another one. This, to me, would suggest the same source of contamination throughout this whole area, since all the signatures of the pies are the same. To do with our cross-facility new feature, where you could just do, we'll actually do that later. We'll do pie charts for, say, metals, and we can look at signatures throughout all your facilities. It's helpful also for background identification. The 3D version of the pie chart is, we call them beach balls, and so it's the added dimension you get here is what, the Z direction. So you not only can do aerial fingerprinting, but by depth. So you can sometimes see different signatures as you go deep. This could be done with soil data too, not just groundwater data. Like I said, just a handful of 3D utilities. That's the last category of the things that the extension does. Not necessarily environmental or connecting you to EQuIS database, but just things that extend the ArcGIS platform, such as 3D labeling. We have a metadata tab I'll show you where you can access the metadata right from within ArcMAP. If I start to use a facility, you want to see your facility and some data, let me know, but we're going to probably focus on Higgins Farm or the Higgins Disposal, and then we'll work with the whole facility group, which is 4 facilities that we have set up. I guess I shouldn't have shown this first. Let me just save this guy and start fresh here. So you can either go in and start ArcMAP normally and access your facility that way, or if you already have it open in EQuIS Professional, you can just click on the ArcMAP or ArcScene button, and it will open that facility, as well as any base map template you have set up. So the idea is if you're working with ArcGIS, you have your map already open, you can just add EQuIS facility data right from within ArcMAP if that's your particular workflow. But if you're working in Pro, you can access any of our interfaces, including ArcMAP, ArcScene. Any questions while ArcMAP starts up? Sometimes it's gotten better over the years, but it's still sometimes up to like 20, 30 seconds. You can see it was loading up some base map layers. That's why it takes a little longer. Higgins disposal facility, and we just have, we will map the sample location type, each unique type. This one only has one, and it's called GenLoc. Just for demonstration, I'm going to pick the other one that has multiple farm, the Higgins farm. So what's the first thing you notice? This is just one facility here that has been mapped. And anyone notice anything that you might not have seen in a table? If we look at this, if we use this distance tool, we can change this to miles. This is about 18 miles away. So this is a good example of how something stands out right in your face in the GIS that you don't catch in a table. Like these samples either had the wrong coordinates or they belong to another facility more. Like that'd be my guess. The facility ID may have gotten entered wrong. So what you can do in that case, if you just want to, because the issue would be is when you zoom out, you always get your back, very far away. You can override the zoom. So this is really where our facility is here. And so if you're working with a facility that has a broad range, you can always just go here and override the extent, so you don't have to zoom out really far all the time. But anyway, so if we use the info tool, we can see the attributes behind the samples. We will just do it on visible layers. So here we see this is our sample locations, MW19D. So here's all the information from our VW location view, such as the type of sample. You can put the driller, the crater, when it went in, so forth. All the symbology is customizable via what ESRI calls a style gallery. It's just a database of symbols. You can put this database on your network that's for everyone to share, and this helps you, everyone have consistent maps. So everyone's monitoring wells are going to be red, borings will be brown. If you have some kind of production department that you send your maps to or documents, they'll love you for this, because I remember that in consulting they spent most time trying to make everyone's maps look alike. With this style gallery, you can assign one or two people or whatever to come up with these symbols, put them on the network, and then you'll have standards in place there. You probably don't want to use teardrops. By default, we just pick a random symbol here, and we put it in your style gallery as a reminder that so you can go in and change it next, like dir push here. We created this random symbol, which was just this water symbol, but I guess maybe that might be a good one for push. So the next time we map our sample location, we'll pick up this symbol instead. We support per facilities symbols, so if you have one site that you always want to use, like black and white symbols that you don't want to use on other facilities, you can put the facility code here, and we'll first look for the facility code before we look for the defaults. Does that make sense? So this lets you override your default symbols. For instance, if you had someone who wanted to save money on production costs, didn't want to have color copies made for huge volumes of reports going out, but you don't want all your maps to be black and white, you can create black and white symbols and call it facility A, B, whatever it's called, and that's how you would support that. So we have symbols, everything created. We have point symbols, we have different lines. Fill symbols, these are used for those pie charts that we create for the different chemicals. So you can customize what chemical colors we use. A lot of times you don't want to use red, especially if it's your own site, since it infers danger to some. We have color ramps. We give you a standard, it's called ramp of hues, or rainbow, from blue to red, as well as various labeling, fonts and things and colors. So if you see any symbology that we're using, just keep in mind it's all customizable. It's not hard-coded. If you want to change colors, fonts, things like that. So if you're clicking on a single location, oops, I don't think I was getting just one. Well, we can do things such as create boring logs from that location, or even view the lithology data. I may have picked one that didn't have lithology. I'm not familiar with this facility. Oh, there we go. Just took a second. So you can define again these colors for your symbols, but we have clay and bedrock. This is editable. If you have write access to the database, you can actually populate this data here within this form graphically. Otherwise, it's read-only. Same as seeing the attributes, but we get this schematic also. The next major category is the EZView Reporting. This is used to query groundwater elevations, groundwater quality data, basically any report that we saw in. We didn't even go with EQuIS Professional, but we have dozens of reports. I'll just show you an example that you can run and even create your own, customize. But the main two are analytical results and water levels. I think we focused mostly yesterday on analytical results, so go ahead and run that next. So this should look familiar because it's exactly the same, that's what I call it at least. You can say pick reports. It's similar to the enterprise one, but here we have Windows Forms type controls. So if we want to just pull out what's the big one, TCE or PCE? Probably PCE is your big one there. So what's number one? Matrix, right? Because you don't want to return potentially soil and groundwater. Unit is always handy because you don't know what units they came in under, so this will standardize the unit, convert them, and then analyte. There it is. The other one that for the GIS it comes into play is this non-detect multiplier. So this is it means if you have it, if it's a non-detect, what do you want that number to come back as? So you can have it half the detection limit, but that's really used for like statistics, risk assessment. For the GIS, personally, I like to have it be a 0, so I know that it's non-detect. I don't have to worry about what detection limit it was. So I always use 0, and then we can also have non-detect symbol, which is just a text. So you can either have that say it's used for labeling. So you can have it do the label, just have it say ND, or you could have that label actually say less than the detection limit. But for this facility, most of the detection limits are the same. So 1, I think they are. So I'm just going to go ahead and put ND. Again, you can change any of these defaults in your database. If you want it to default to ND and 0, we can do that. More advanced topic. And then, of course, I like to save these because I don't like to repeat picking parameters all the time. So this is just PCE and groundwater. And we click Go. So most of you haven't seen the EQuIS Professional reports, but this is the exact same dialogue you get. We have a EQuIS ArcGIS. We have a web mapping solution. That's not what I'm showing here. That's EQuIS ArcGIS server, but it does run EZView reports with the same parameter tree that you saw in. Basically, all the applications have that same criteria. You can run analytical results, say pick reports, run those, map those. So that part, yes, but this is a desktop application I'm showing, so it doesn't run, in the web at all. ArcMAP. So in EQuIS Professional, this shares the same user interface a lot with the EQuIS ArcGIS. So you can export to Excel, you can do charting, you can cross-tab it right here, even while we're in the ArcGIS. But since we just did a single analyte, we're just going to go ahead and map that. We'll go ahead and give it a better name and just call it TCE and groundwater. We can map the non-detects as a separate layer, and I'll go over the other options in a little bit, but for now we'll just use the basic. And if I turn off these other layers so we can see the points better. There we go. So here we have, it's a ramp of hues, they call it. So the blue is the coldest, the red is the hottest. We've got some values there that's 9999. I found in your database that there's some values that are used to represent null that shouldn't be, but that's what that one must be also. We can go in, the value that we map for all the analytical results is called report result value. So you want to make note of that field. That's basically the calculated standardized value. So we see, this is something you'd want to look into. Why are these samples here? 999. So that's a simple, analytical results, graduated colors. The option we check that option to separate non-detects, so that's why we have the little black dots. Because sometimes, it's hard to differentiate if you had blue, light blue for the non-detect. So that's just an option depending on how you like your map to go. So we'll run it again, but we're going to do multiple analytes this time. So I'm just going to open up that last one because I don't like to pick things over and over again. TCE, which I'm not seeing now. Maybe I forgot to save it. It's easy enough. We just need matrix again. What's the next one? Who's paying attention? What's another field that we need to use for analytical results? No? I gotta keep these. Depth do we need? No, don't care about that. What do we need to make sure the values come back the same unit, right? Because if ppb, ppm, we need to, it doesn't matter which one we pick, but we need to tell it, because we can't assume that we have 10,000, 100,000 records. Unit. Anyone else? What's another one that you really need to pick if you're going to do mapping? You can pick nothing and you'll get all the analytical results, but is it going to make any sense if you map it with different units and different chemicals? It just make no sense. And I think actually I return it as just black dots when you do that. Say, you have fun, map it whatever way you want. Okay, so the next one is matrix. And that one's, you can do without, especially here, because you just have W and WG. I already picked it there. And then we're going to do an analyte group. This is the one where I'll need help.
You can do the VOC.
Oh yeah, we did the VOA, this one?
Actually, do the VOC.
Oh, because we are in the farm, right?
Yep.
So VOC should be good. So here we get, always pay attention to how many rows you've got. Here we don't have any weirdness. That's a thing we could try. Sample type, I thought was N by default. I forgot to do my 0 also. Yeah, under sample. Oh yeah, that's probably what it was. Just normal sample, not QA/QC sample. And the other way we can handle this is we click filter and we can say I want to return less than 1,000,000. Less than that value. So now we have 106, so it was 1080 last time. So that's a kind of quick and dirty way to get rid of those QA/QC samples, or basically the values that we should probably look at further in our database. Then we cross-tab this. Why do we cross-tab? Because we want to create pies. We want to look at the average or maximum concentration of each analyte at each location. And to be able to use the pies, ArcGIS requires you to have the fields of the chemicals along the top rather than a chemical in each row. So by default, we'll give you this layout. You can customize this by clicking back. So if you wanted to use like the last, sorry, my voice is gone. You want to use the last sample or the first, the median, the average, you could do that. We use maximum, just the most conservative, the worst case scenario. So just go ahead and open that in ArcGIS. Same options for your layer name and symbology options. We're going to just call it, we have VOCs, groundwater, and we'll click next. So here we've got pies. There are a couple options with the symbology for pies. It can move them so they're not overlapping, but sometimes it moves them so far it's hard to get a sense of where they're coming from. So we turn that option off. What stands out to you guys? And this is way different signature than these wells, correct? And this is that means what? Either different source of contamination or different analytes were measured. They maybe didn't sample for the same things at both of them. That could also account for this different signature. I'm not familiar with this site at all, so is there any reason, do you think, does it make sense that this area would be a lot different? Are these background? All right, so that's great. You set me up for the next thing. We can select the locations, and then we just right-click and say label. And if we want to zoom up on these guys, we do we convert them to called annotation. Otherwise, if we zoomed up, it always remains that constant size. But the annotations will get bigger so we can read it better here. And let it get, I'm just making, your template is set up for meters, but all your data is in decimal degrees, and so I just want to make sure everything was on the same page here before I did some. I was just wondering how wide this was. This isn't a huge site, is it?
No,
it's not. Okay, so that's just a quarter mile. We can do other scaling things with this to make them not so big. We can make them not tilted, which is sometimes a good way to go, and just make them smaller. Or we can also, this is a good trick I learned with all the lawyers in my ear. If it's your site and you have things you may want to hide, not stress or show so much, use log option. Then all the pies look the same, right? None look scary, huge. It's the same data. You're not lying. You're just lawyering. This is recorded, so I probably shouldn't say that. There might be some lawyers. You turn these labels off on this guy so you can see better. What you do is select the elements and just hit delete. So here we see I just made them not tilted and also just log option. So log option stresses signature more than magnitude. So if your goal is to identify that there's this person definitely messed up my site. Look at all this blue and yellow that I don't have on mine. That's why you would use log. You don't have to do it now, but just wondering if you wanted to see the layout of the site. Right. I wasn't sure where your base map. We can also. This is a nice thing in ArcGIS 10. We can integrate with the ArcGIS Online right here. You can just search, and a good one, you can add data. A good one is Bing Hybrid. And so there's tons of free data you can get online. And the Bing Hybrid, it's pretty high resolution. It's getting even better in the United States over the next year or so. These are kind of big again, so I'm going to make them small. so we can see a little bit behind them. Yeah, I like this better than even that CAD map you guys I saw yesterday. Or we can use this effects toolbar to change transparency even, so if we wanted to see kind of more behind the pies. It's a feature of ArcGIS 10. They basically integrated the Arc catalog and geoprocessing into these different tools. So the trick is to bring up the search and then change the drop down from local search to ArcGIS Online. You can set up enterprise search and have it set to index. You know, you've got geodatabases on your network. You'll definitely want to set this up when you all migrate to 10 to index the all your geodatabases, because it's really fast at searching. You want to do it overnight because it can be kind of hog. I guess while we're going over it, we do take advantage of a couple ArcGIS 10 features that I should probably point out. They're handy. They have the Arc catalog now integrated. I guess, how many people have used ArcMAP, ArcGIS? Okay, so the rest of you may not appreciate it so much, but the Arc catalog now is integrated within ArcMAP. This is basically what we had to use to manage your data, to create any new spatial data files. You had to go out into Arc catalog, bring it into ArcMAP. It's kind of a pain, but now you can do this all within this within ArcMAP. We support what they call it default geodatabase. So when you connect to your facility, you just click this button, bam, you can see where we put this. All your output data goes in this geodatabase, so you don't have to go wondering where your data is. What you create for your facility is in just this one geodatabase. You can put this on ArcGIS Online if you wanted to share it. You can export it to what they call data package, which you can think of as like a zip file for GIS data. Nice thing about these data packages is it saves the symbology with the data. So it's like a zip file, but with symbols. Because in the past, you'd have to share shape files, which is like, 7 little files, and you get no symbology to go with that. So they've made it a lot nicer to share the spatial data. The way we put all of our output in My Documents, we have a My EQuIS Work, EQuIS Pro, and ArcGIS. Put everything in there by default. Underneath a folder with the, this is the database server, I believe, EQuIS Owner. Does that sound right? And then a subfolder for each facility. So that's why EQuIS Owner, I assume, is the name of either the database schema or the database server. So each user will have this. You can override this in Pro, but that's getting a little more advanced and ahead of myself. So do we have water level data here? Is that something you'd like to see?
I believe there's water level data there.
I guess I can show you how we can find out pretty easy, but you just click go and you get all the water level data, essentially.
Yep.
I don't think there are any caveats like the analytical results about converting. So we've got 1720 records from 91 to 2010. So we can open that in ArcGIS. It'd be a good time to show. We have a feature in our last release called group layers. This creates a layer that's subdivided by one of your fields in your query. So you can have it return a layer for every month of water levels, every quarter. This is one of the huge time savers. I'm not sure what your sampling interval for these was. Anyone have any idea? It wasn't that much data, so let's just try it by quarter, maybe. Okay, I'm not going to do the group layer first. I'll just return it all first, and then we'll come back and group layer. I'll show you this time feature. Okay, so again, it's coming. There's a couple points over here, but that's the same as before. Yeah, we can. Let me turn the aerial off here. This is so you can go like this and then click on the attribute, and then you can highlight just these. These are SA. There's a whole bunch of SA locations. Okay. All right, so who knows? 18 miles away, so same facility. It's just what you can do is they have these bookmarks. It's just saved position of your zoom, so you may want to do that for a facility like this. It helps you to get, to your location, your zoom that you're at. So you can call this, upper facility. And then it's listed under bookmarks. You can get back to this, and you can create another one for the lower, or what have you. Let's create water level again, but we're going to render it with graduated symbols. Oops, sorry, I picked the analytical result. Tell me if I go too fast. I always forget, and I even noticed that I was going a little too fast that time for myself. Okay, so we have what Janet showed yesterday was all EQuIS Enterprise. That's web-based. We have EQuIS that's desktop, EQuIS Professional for the desktop. It's for runs under a Windows client. It's what they call thick client or Windows Form client. It doesn't run in a browser. It needs to be installed. In your case, you need to have an administrator install it even, because it's a Windows installer package. The website, unless they're blocking websites, you don't. They could be doing that, but you just go to the URL essentially, and it's more accessible, I guess, is the difference between the Enterprise and Pro. EQuIS for ArcGIS is included with Pro, the Pro install. So it's part of our desktop solutions. And then we have the EQuIS for ArcGIS server. It's in the Enterprise family. So EDP, there's also a web-based EDP and a desktop EDP. Right, and then there's a standalone EDP, which is the same as the one that you see in Pro. It's just taken out, and you can give to labs and distribute. They have a for free license to distribute. People can submit you good data, because garbage in, garbage out. We always say, you can, if you don't have good data in there, it doesn't matter what your pies look like if it's meaningless data behind it. And they all use the same database too, so it's nice. You can create a PIC report in Enterprise and ask your GIS person to map that. They're able to see that list of PIC reports. So they don't need to know environmental science necessarily. You could have someone who knows what to query, a risk assessor or whatever, say, I want these certain things. They set up whether they want half detection limit for the value, and then ask them to map it. Because it's tough to get GIS experience and environmental experience, especially, sounds like you guys are cutting back. It's tough to find. You get summer students would be great for this, I think, that know the GIS, but not necessarily all the science behind it. So I just returned that water level data, and I'm going to graduated symbols is what I wanted here. The field is called exact ELIV, and we'll just use this inverted triangle is kind of a good standard water level. And this is, I'm looking at the data, it's all 0. Maybe maybe I do need to pay more care to just click and go on it. Is this what you ran?
Yeah.
We can look at the values here before they come into the GIS. It's called exact. I'm seeing them as null.
Is it trying to calculate it?
No.
Can you focus on just the...
Do we need to calculate it sometimes? Yeah, I was just using the standard, so maybe calculating. Yeah, that's what it did by default. It did that, but we can try it with the other facility. Let's go ahead and jump to the other Higgins. Higgins were dirty contamination people or something, or was it a company or not a family? Contamination family. Okay, so hopefully we'll get water level data here, but if I don't, I'll just pretend that the sample locations elevations are, the top of the casing is water levels, just to show the example I was going to with it. Or surface elevation, I mean. There's the coordinate, There we go. So here, for whatever reason, we had nulls there. For here we have a couple, so again, if you want to filter that, not get these back in your results, you say non-blanks, and then open the GIS. Whoop. There we go. So when you have water levels, we symbolize it with graduated symbols by default, unless they're all null, which like the first one, that's why, again, when it's null, or I don't know how to symbolize it like that, you get black dots. That's why you get black dots. If you query all chemicals and don't cross-tab it, black dots. You can use any of the ArcGIS tools to symbolize it yourself. It's like any other layer. So here's the water levels for the Higgins farm, or disposal. We can do this like any other layer. We can use info. I call it info tool. It's identify. We can use identify to look at any of the attributes if I could click them. And so here's the water level data. But graduated symbols, that's not the way people really look at water levels. They contour it, right? So we're going to use our module for contouring with Golden Software Surfer. You can also use like the Spatial Analyst, ESRI Spatial Analyst, or 3D Analyst to do contouring. If there's a request, we could walk through that. But I think you'll find that the contours with Surfer give you the best quality, the kinds of contours that you expect in engineering drawings. The ESRI ones, kind of jaggy sometimes, with staircase effects that I wouldn't put in a report. But again, we try to mask Surfer for you, so you just learn our interface, and then if you wanted to be advanced, you can choose to modify it in Surfer before we come back into the GIS. So here we just pick our layer, and then the field. We can grid up your actual Z geometry of each feature, but we're just going to use the surf value, exact elevation. That's water level data. And then natural neighbor and kriging are probably the best ones for water level and analytical results. The natural neighbor is nice because it will not go out far beyond the points themselves. So it'll do its own range. It won't be interpolating where you have no data. So if you run this on a facility group where you've got just a few here and here, it's going to create little spots of contour rather than a huge contour that would suggest you're mapping things that you don't have data for. So that's why this is my favorite nerd interpolator. This is your grid geometry. This is for your contour area, how you want the extent. Since we have this facility, you've got it 18 miles apart. Yeah, it's all in the Surfer help, and I think even online on their website they go into the benefits of each one, pros and cons, with example drawings. But the cliff notes is kriging and natural neighbor. Kriging if you're doing a square area that you're not worried about it over extrapolating where you don't have data. But if you've got an irregular shape or scattered points far away with nothing in between, natural neighbor you'll get the best results with, just from my experience. So this is important here, this grid, I never know these coordinates where exactly those are when I'm working on a site, but you may learn to know them. But you can do this thing, set it to the visible extents. So if you just want to contour this area here, that's what this button is for. You can even sketch out a rectangle on the map and just grid up that area. Before I did any of that, by default, it would be doing that whole water level, so that whole layer. And so it would be, with 100 cells over that huge area, it would be very blocky, right? So keep that in mind. If you're doing a large area, you're going to want to increase. It's so quick that it's easy. If it comes back looking all blocky, you can just run it again, and we remember all your values basically, so you can just change them, a couple of the things that you'd like. this grid log transform is handy for especially organic chemical data where it's spanning orders of magnitude. You've got some TCE 10,000, and then but you also care about the ones that are 10. When you use that grid log, it will pin down your contours. So some of the stuff we showed in the Google contours, they could benefit from this approach because they won't go all berserk, and I'll show that if people want to see the difference between the two. Again, it's not lying. It's just it's showing your data in a different way. Just put a legend in your data, and then you're set. I guess I didn't really drive home the end of the point on those pies with the log versus non-log, but with the signatures. But so let's go ahead and try this guy now. Not liking that value. In the past, I always recommended using projected, but it will work with geographic. Just you run into issues sometimes with the cell size, when you're changing this. I think that's what I ran into just there with rounding. Hopefully this will go now, and then visible extent. There we go. This is just all water levels, I think it was, so it's probably not meaningful. You can have it use contour. What contour intervals do you want to use? The regular here is the surfer default. It lets surfer figure out what contour intervals. But if you have set ones you want to use, like especially for organic data, when you want to contour MCL PRG, you can use surfer to save a level file, which is a text file, and then you use that surfer level file with this. That's if you want contours at 1, 5, irregular numbers. But we also have this new option, use the symbol ranges. So if you've already got this graduated symbol, use those for your contours. So that's what we default to. So you could go in there and make these, whatever you want before you run the contour. If you want to have the contours match your, that's the easiest way to do your irregular intervals. Modify the graduated symbol and then run it. And then we have all these sorts of options. Everything's got, most everything has tooltips to explain more. Seems like, there we go. So we return filled contours, that's the polygon, or just lines. We can return the surfer grid, raster grid. So all the surfer output is returned into that file or personal geodatabase in ESRI format, even in the grid. For water level data, these vector maps can be used to, hydrogeologists will not like this, but it can show groundwater flow direction, or approximate. You'll see. They say it's not exactly gradients, but for purposes of doing visualizations to show just water flow directions, they're really. Whoops. So sometimes with the demo versions of Surfer, it doesn't let you export the grid.
And it's also when you get this program, it also downloads the demo?
No, that can be installed separate. We work with Surfer 7, 8, 9, 10, and over the years it's been inconsistent that what their demo will actually work. Like if you use the interface, it won't let you save files or export, but they forgot to block the whole programmatically, so when we use it, you can see we basically just did that with the demo version of Surfer. You'll cut this out of the recording, right?
I should say that we only currently in the region have one Surfer license. So
Okay.
if you wanted to do this application, you would have to ask Michael Slyback to design a license.
The nice thing about the Surfer, you can run it off a network share, and as long as one person is using it at a time. It doesn't have to be installed like with the administrator rights we were talking about. We don't get the grid here because of whatever version we're using. That demo did not export the grid, but we did get contours. So they're not spaced out so well because I just used the graduated symbol ones. Let's run it again and just use Surfer defaults. 600 is kind of a lot, but we'll try that again. And regular intervals here we'll try. It's always good practice to kind of, especially if you're doing lots of these layers, use a unique name each time, because if you use ArcMAP a lot, you'll notice it locks onto things even though you close files. If you go to try to delete it in Windows Explorer, it's locked by ArcMAP. So that if you're using the same layer all the time, we may have problems overriding that. And there's actually an option here that says to never overwrite existing, which will help give you a unique one each time. Yeah, the grid seems like this version of the Surfer demo, it's not exporting grids, but it'll give us the contours using default levels, which will look better. See, that's a little better. This is all the data, that's why it doesn't make sense, right? It's just whatever data was in there for each month. It's just showing the contours of that. It'd make more sense to do it by month or what have you. So when you do this one layer, for all your dates, this is another ArcGIS 10 feature, time-aware layers. So we can use this feature to show a snapshot or animation of any layer over time. We set up the time slider intervals based on a layer, which will be this water level. And we, again, just like the Surfer, you see they borrowed here from the, the Google Earth. It looks almost exactly the same as their slider. So this we'll use from 2006 to 2010. Does that sound about right for our water level data? So it'll use the min-max by default. And here we've got this window. It's like, we'll leave it by default 0 and you'll see what happens. So we can push play. So right now, each step it's going monthly or every 30 days. The reason why we're seeing nothing for some of the time is because our window is nothing. I'm just showing you this exact day. But for our type of data, you want to make that window kind of overlap. So, because water level data, you start sampling it, and you're probably not finished with all your wells for a month or so at least, if you have a lot. So we can put 1 is a good, sorry, and we'll try that again, see if, I guess the goal here is, when I use it, is to make sure we always have some symbols going, right? So 1 is better, right? But maybe 3 would be better. It helps if you know the database in your sampling interval, but you can see how easy it is to just explore your data when you're just given a site, when you're finding out discovery what you have. It's really just doing it's doing a query saying from this date to this date. Does that record match it for that date field? If it does, it shows it. You can also you can do labeling on these, and that will animate also. The default label though is probably not appropriate. It's the exact elevation. So we could leave that. We can also round it off if we don't want to have.
You mean put the date?
Yeah, so the snapshot and you put it in the.
Yeah, we could do that. So this might, don't let this scare anyone. This is just so I wanted to round that because I see a whole bunch of decimal points that don't look so great. So I just round it by 2 to make sure I've got that right syntax. It's VB script. And then we wanted to, if you wanted to show the date before that, I'm not sure at all, but it looks like, that my window here is too big. Oh, it's just because there's 2 places right next to each other, so maybe that was just fine. But here, when we play now, you'll see the late.
Deep and shallow.
Okay, yeah. If you have you guys have Maplex extension, I'm pretty sure, don't you have a deal with ESRI for all the ArcGIS? Maplex is not on by default, but it's a better labeling engine. You'd probably want to have your guys put Maplex on in your template that you have it open. Because when we run in Maplex now, you're going to notice these labels look a heck of a lot. Oh, I thought. We can change it to we can go into here and tell it to move those around. You know, I don't want to have them overlapped. Placement properties. We want to shift it depending on the position, and we can stack it. We can reduce the font size. The Maplex has really got some serious rules that you can define. If you've got lots of cluster wells that you have CAD people always putting labels on for monitoring wells and moving, a lot of tedious stuff can be avoided with this Maplex. So we'll just go ahead and try that guy. So that helps a little with the overlapping of the labels. Let's go play it now. So that's the time-aware layers. Essentially any layer that has a date field in ArcGIS 10 will return it and set up the time-aware layer. But it doesn't get turned on until you turn the time slider on. Does that make sense? So every layer has a time tab, and if we have a date in your water levels, analytical results, we'll set this up for you as time-aware. It doesn't start doing this visual filtering by time until you turn on, basically the time slider. See how it's all, this is now time is off, so it shows everything. Time is on, now it's just showing this one range. So for ArcGIS 9 users, how do we support this? Or even 10 if you're creating, if you want to have a map for every, you're doing a monitoring well report or, annual report, we can create these group layers. So it's going to create a unique layer for each quarter, for example. Each year you want to create a unique water level layer. So we click group layer, and we'll use quarter because I'm not exactly familiar with your data here. And we'll call it water levels by quarter. So we've got a trick when you're dealing with these group layers. If you hold down Control while you're doing anything, like I'm clicking this expand contract, it'll do it on all these sub layers. If I want to turn them all off and on, I hold down Control. So if we just want to look at one, so here we've got, when we create a dozen or so layers, we've got no data here. So this is what, quarter 1, 2006. Oh, because no, I have time on. If you things like where's my layer? It's usually because you've got that time snapshot on. That's why I didn't see any layers. So all these points now, this is a group layer. Each sub layer is essentially a quarter, right? So you can create map layout window for all your water levels. Basically, you've mapped all your water levels in one operation, basically. Not only can you just do this graduated symbol thing, but you can run the surfer module on the group layer, and so it'll contour every single sublayer. This approach works with chemical data. You can query your chemical data and have it create a group layer for every chemical you've got. And in one operation, you've made graduated colors for every chemical. You can do it with pies. If you have pies you want to show over time, you can group it by date and then create, quarterly pies. It's just something I wish I had for annual reports where you're doing the same tedious type map over and over again. It's really probably what people are creating to send to you guys more than what you're doing to be creating. But it's great for just again, if you don't know what's at your site, just run it on all the data, group it by chemical. You could we'll go over that when we do the facility group. So here I'm taking, for when you want to use when you want it to operate on all the sublayers, you pick the top level one, the way I had it work. And then again, we'll pick exact elevation. We'll make this 517 is a little overkill, I think. We'll just make it like 100, or maybe a little more. and we just use regular ones, and this is quarterly contours. I won't bring the grid in, I won't do vector map. I just want to do contours for all these layers. So again, I found myself accidentally running the wrong facility. I just wanted to get into another facility. You don't have to go back into Pro and click the button. If you're already in ArcMAP, you just click from the EQuIS for ArcGIS toolbar, add facility. And so this is the same login you get in Pro, but a lot of you haven't seen Pro yet. So, but when you do that kind of training, this is the ribbon is unique to the GIS, but all of this login and connection information, it's the same way you connect to a facility in Pro. You can add favorites if you have to get quick access to any facility. Do we want to do the facility group now? That's the new feature no one's ever seen, ever. So we had 5 facilities in there, but one was not in that long. So right now the requirement is that you've got to use the same coordinate system on all the sub-facilities in the facility group, which you guys are using. There was just one oddball. Was it called, like, it started with an O, or? Yeah, that, or maybe it might have had a mix and match, but there was some definitely, like, it looked like state plane or UTM values in there, so I just took that out of the facility group. So we have, I think it was 666 locations in this sample group, which was not a good sign for us when we saw 666, but in 4 facilities. But there's no reason why you can't use it on, you know, all of your EPA's facilities to see things across the whole country. Again, you have to consider things like sampling methods, what was sampled where, before you do too much reading into this, but the tools are there now. So again, it's the same way, except we pick a facility group. I've already put that there as a favorite, but the way you would get that favorite is you'll see it in bold here. These are your facilities, but the facility group will be as represented as folders, and from there you can just open that to get the whole group. You can add it as the favorite, or you can even, the default facility is in Pro, it'll always, instead of giving you this login each time, it'll just open that each time. So another thing to keep aware is that it may take a little longer to get Pro open because it's doing that connection. So some people don't like to set default facility for that reason, especially if you're working with a lot of facilities. But we'll go ahead and just do this open facility. It's to open the facility group. Currently, it assumes that they're all the same projection. It doesn't check. It's going to pull out the first one and say that you've got it. You've done your work. This may change in the next release, but right now we assume that they all have the same coordinate system projection. I should have hit cancel on that. Let me try this again. We have WGS 84. That's when you have a general, what people call lat long. It's WGS 84 is what you should pick. So that's what we should use. Yeah, that's the most general lat long type. Can you go back and show us again? Yeah, sorry, I was going quick. Let me come again because it didn't seem to work that time. In Pro, again, same interface, right? We can just click on here, train, this is our facility group. If you hover over it, you'll get a little tool tip, so you can see what that favorite is for, and open that. You'll notice a lot of these, well, you will notice in the next version that almost all the, a lot of the functionality is disabled because it doesn't make sense to run on a facility group. But you can access all your reports as well as the GIS. Let's go ahead and open up that in ArcMAP. So you guys have it set to open some template. You have a customized template that always opens opening some custom tools and layers, and for all the facilities it's using this, so it's always you're gonna have to zoom up. Support per facility templates. This has nothing to do with EQuIS, so that's something that you want to have per facility templates. Basically, this one zoomed up to your layers you want. You can save that on your network in a certain known location with the name of your facility code, and we'll open that one instead, and that's what I recommend. Especially sites you work on a lot, you're not going to want to have it every single time you have to zoom up. It's just a little thing I call the first world problem. Big deal, but kind of annoying. So here we've got facility group, and we've got. I'm going to turn off these just for now, and make sure that we have it set to lat long. That's one of the things. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I zoomed to layer. Just that's the way to get your whole extent. So here we've got. If we want to do some labels, let's label these. So these are. It looks like these are the four. I guess the labels aren't helping much there. These are. We have. If you want to see your number of records, see we have each number in parentheses here. You can also open the attributes and see, the data behind this facility group. So here we've got facility ID. So again, you can customize these symbols however you like. You zoom in to use sub-facility to work on that particular one, or we can just query all of that. Since what's our active facility now is what this facility group. Let me zoom back. Oh, I went too far there. Sorry, I know I'm going fast again, but there's on the end here. There's a issue with site performance with the symbols I picked. I picked fonts called character marker symbols, and they look nicer, but they take longer to draw. So if you want to use different symbols. For example, these are all character marker symbols. It's essentially true type fonts, and they're nice because they have these halos and things, but at the price of performance. So on these facility groups, it makes sense probably not to use these character marker symbols. We can use something they call a simple marker symbol. That's just like circles, squares, diamonds. But also, just removing that halo, they call it, that can also help. So let's try removing the halo, because 666 is not that many locations, actually. So we'll take off the halo. I know I'm going fast, but this is more of a, this is standard ArcGIS symbology. This has nothing to do with EQuIS ArcGIS per se. Just a tip. Yeah, I mean, if I were to try to teach ArcGIS, we would be here all week. If just the standards of ArcGIS alone.
We have periodic ArcGIS classes if anybody wants to expand on that. Linda Sander does that.
Yeah.
You can look for that in your email. We have that.
Yeah, I apologize. I totally have been just focusing on what our value-added features to the ArcGIS. And if you're lost at any part, let me know. Especially like you said, if you didn't understand what part we're adding value to, for like that grouping layer. You definitely don't get that. I mean, ESRI doesn't even give you an option to, label the selected features out of the box. The Arc objects that it's built on is very powerful, but there's a lot of it that's not even exposed to the end user. And hopefully you'll see some of the stuff that we've taken advantage of. So we've got no halos on this guy. If I do a refresh here, we'll see how the drawing performance increase. Or another way to do it is just zoom up close. Look at that. There's no redraw delay. So it's the halo is the expensive thing here. If you had tens of thousands, then maybe you want to consider getting rid of the character marker symbols. But when you do that, you're only left with circles, squares, diamonds. Really ugly. I mean, it just depends what your goal is. If you're just doing analysis on the screen to get a feel of it. You know, who cares what the symbols are? But if you're doing any kind of published document, you want to use one of the like 5,000 symbols that it literally comes with. And in 10, you can search for symbols now. So if you want, you can find turtles. I had to do something with turtles. They had turtles and birds and all these sorts of things in there.
When you say identify the tools to probe the facility or well, does it have related classes to chemistry or whatever?
We can. I totally skipped over in the add facility. There is a. Let me go ahead and. So I'm going to save this layer because I don't want to lose all my symbols I customized. Just all you do is save this layer, custom location layer. You would do this in the case where you're like, oh, well, I want to put those symbols in the style gallery, but not right now. And I just want to make sure that I don't lose all that, clicking of Halo. That's why I did that. You can also do that thing, layer package. That's a zip file, and you run that, and you just say validate, and oh, it's unknown. But anyway, that's how you would save it out with the data. But so let's go. We go into add facility, and there's a whole section here on tables. That actually, when you do that, that'll bring in all the populated EQuIS tables and create ArcGIS relates between the sample locations and the tables. So that allows you to do that, exactly what you were asking. Click identify, and then we'll drill down into see like water levels and things that were sampled at each location. I just didn't show it for, just not to make it too complex here, but we'll go ahead and say we want to use that existing layer we just did, open the tables. We could go into detail on this if you like, but there's tooltips to explain the different techniques for opening tables, the pros and cons of each, but we'll go ahead and just do this copy down option here, and we're going to do it on our facility group. So the copy is, it is copying them to our file geodatabase. This is handy. It's not connected to the EQuIS database anymore, but it's nice because you can use it like on the airplane when you're disconnected from the network. If you're taking your work home and you can't get to the database on your network and you want to use any of the EQuIS tables in like a geoprocessing model. The only reason you really need to bring in the tables, it takes, number one, it takes significantly longer to get up and running when you're bringing in all these tables, but they're only handy for exactly what you said, identifying and drilling down to see what's sampled, or if you want to use any of the out-of-the-box ArcGIS tools like geoprocessing models, or just SQL select, select by attributes, then you can do it on any of the EQuIS tables. Other than that, EZView, our EZView reports, that's the best way to query the data. Then you don't have to access the individual tables because the reports handle all the complex relationships between them. If you're doing it, if you were to do it manually with the raw tables, for example, if you open up like DT, like aquifer tests, there's no XYZ column on that, right? So you'd have to do all that joining and stuff in the ArcGIS environment. So it brought in, like I said, it brings in just every populated table. Make sure it's done. I don't think it's quite done. Yeah. So I choose the copy down because it takes a little bit longer, but it's nice because the next time you run it, there's an option to say use existing copy down, and it's then really fast. It'll just pick those up, create the relationships. This is another good way to see what's in your database. Yes?
EZView that you mentioned is the browser.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, EZView, we're not sure about the future of that term, but that's what we call our reports. The tabular parameter, the parameter tree I was referring to that we see in Pro, EQuIS, ArcGIS, and in the web, basically where you pick water, you pick your chemicals, any of the parameters. That's EZView, basically what was called EZView. I think we're just going to call it reports to be more consistent.
Make that for future sessions.
Make which person?
The report itself.
The results, the layer that you get, like those, like the pies that got, yeah, that's all stored in your geodatabase, which is ESRI's, storage for spatial data. So here all of our output for our facility stored in the geodatabase called EQuIS output. If you're familiar with a shapefile, from back in the day, it's the shapefile 2.0. It's basically a container for a bunch of shapefiles. It's not proper terminology, but that's what you could think of it as. If you know what a shapefile is, geodatabase is basically like a folder full of shapefiles, right? ESRI wouldn't agree, but that's the way I think of it. You could also put tables in this thing. On disk, it just looks like a folder, and you can copy that over to other folders. But it's best to use ArcCatalog for managing it, even though it does look in Windows Explorer like a folder, because you'll see a bunch of long, weird named files. Don't go in the folder. Use this ArcCatalog. And again, the easiest way in 10 to get to it, you just hit this, bam, and it shows you where it is. You can look at the, I didn't even talk about metadata. Metadata is, especially for government agencies, I saw you guys had some metadata utilities installed, so it looks like it's already been important for some stuff or at least the tools they installed. So we can look at all of our layers. We create every required FGDC metadata tag. We populate every single one. Does anybody work with metadata, or is this something you're interested in? Or usually it's the people have to populate it when they give it to you, so not so much you populating it, so much yourself, I would say. But we totally support using it from your EQuIS database if you have contact information, addresses, your business hours, all in DT facility and DT person. We'll pull that and use that in the metadata. So if we look at the sample locations layer, we've got, you see the name, EQuIS power users, not very, but I assume your logins have your name in it, so you can see who created each layer. You get a thumbnail, tells you about that layer. In ArcGIS 10, they kind of hide a lot of the details by default, but in 9.3, someone has that. We'll go over that, and you'll see there's 50 or something metadata fields that we populate. So our tables, we're back to the tables again. So for some reason we didn't get symbols here. Let's get rid of this layer. Add it again. Use existing, and then when you have use existing tables, it should be much faster. Something wrong with the sample locations there. Let's try one more thing here. Let's just use unknown. It was working so good a second ago. Oh, there we go. I'm just impatient. All right, so here we've got, again, we see the halo, how long it's taken. I mean, it's not that long, but longer. And so we should have our tables open up now. So how do we know this? We can click this, what's this called, list by source. So here we see all these tables are now copied down into that geodatabase. File geodatabase is the recommended one. That's the newer of the geodatabases for desktop. There's ArcSDE geodatabase, that's the enterprise. I saw that you guys have some ArcSDE layers, but we currently don't support writing your output work into ArcSDE. If you want to put this output into ArcSDE, we can create like a geoprocessing model that copies that over like every Friday after work or something, if you want to store all of these like output queries in one place, so that you aren't reinventing the wheel. If someone's already created pie charts and stuff or TCE layers, you can use the search tool, same one I searched for Bing, to search your internal repository for the layers. And with the metadata, you can see exactly what and when they created that layer. But I keep not delivering on the final example here of the drill down of the identify tool, but here we go. So now we brought in the ArcGIS relates, and now when we click on, they have this topmost layer, visible layer. I usually like visible layer or selectable layer. Here, so now you get plus sign next to it when you have relates. So you can click on any location and drill down. Also like this, I know I'm going too fast, I'll slow. You can change this to put it side by side, which I prefer, than vertical, which is like this one. There we go. I like this the old-fashioned way, but if you want it on top, you can do that. So this lets you essentially, if you, any EQuIS 3 users, any chance? This was similar. We had EQuIS geology. This is something we called, what the heck was it called? Remember, we had site tools. I can't even remember now. But you could drill down into your data. Well, now you can do this in the GIS. If you want to see water levels, we can get that. So that's exactly what you were asking for, I hope. Again, probably not the best symbols I use, but it's just to show how you can customize them. This is what field is this that we're symbolizing on? By default, it's loc type field in DT location. That can be customized if you have some other field you're using that you want to symbolize by. But again, it's just for the renderer in the ArcGIS for how it's. Yeah, you can you're using loc type. You can change it to any field you want here in the options. There's tons of options to go over. Almost all have tooltips for more information, but for this is one example. This is when this sample location comes in. This is the group by layer, the group by field. I mean, for the unique value renderer. If you mess these up too much, if you find things aren't acting right like they did originally, just click Restore Defaults, and it'll be back to the default working. We do support personal geodatabase. That's where everything's stored in an MDB, but that's being phased out. It's out at ESRI, and ArcGIS Server next version not even going to support it. There's 64-bit ArcMAP. That's rumored to come out. I guess I can't say officially because it's business partner NDA or whatever, but allegedly 64-bit ArcMAP, no personal geodatabase support. The 64-bit EQuIS, if it exists, that won't support MDB files. Just the architecture of 64-bit and access don't work. So that's why we have recommended. So you should use file geodatabase. If you find that if you have some, these options that you want to use throughout your organization, you can customize this. We can show you how you can set that up so it works on everyone has the same options. Like when it does that metadata thumbnail, if you want it to be in a 3D perspective thumbnail and have everyone do it, you can set that.
Let me interrupt for a minute, Mike. We get about, I think.
Oh yeah, I didn't even do the best chemical data.
We wanted to do the chemical data, and then you were going to show how to do something in their ESRI ARC.
Right, contours.
Yeah.
So let's do contours first and end with the water level, analytical results across facilities. So ESRI has spatial analyst and 3D analyst for doing this. They essentially share the same rendering engines. They have 3, I believe, to create the grids. We have, I guess they're now in geoprocessing models. So we click this this Arc toolbox, and we can dock it now in Arc 10. We can use search across this also. Window search. Same search where we searched online, but now we want to search for tools. And we want to do contour. So here's all our contour, spatial analyst, 3D analyst. So we'll just do a surface contour. We'll just do a regular old contour. Has anybody used the geoprocessing environment at all? It's you can create models out of these, but these are just the standard ones for contouring. Here we pick our input layer, input raster. So that's actually doing the contouring, so we need to actually grid it first. Before this was available on the toolbar, but now it looks like it's all in the geoprocessing tool. We want to create a raster surface, right? A raster interpolation, there we go. So here we have inverse distance weighted. I personally, sometimes I've seen that look okay, but to me it always looks like a bunch of concentric circles, not really representing water level data. But again, what do we have? Kriging natural neighbors. So this would be a good comparison. Natural neighbors, see how this one, I believe their natural neighbor is a lot less staircasey than their Kriging. So here I find an issue here with it doesn't like our backspace here in the layer name in that geoprocessing tool. So I'm just going to remove that. Run this again. So you just pick your input layer. What field do we want to contour? It's, I picked the wrong one. We wanted to do water level data, right? But I'll just do it on the, this is a good way to get a quick and dirty surface elevation from your facility. You can just do a contour of the surface elevation that you have from your surveyed points, and then that's the rough estimate, right, of your ground. Output cell size, it's very small because you're in digital decimal degrees, right? And your output, it stores it in your default geodatabase, which is the same one that all the EQuIS output went to. This is all ESRI, nothing to do with EarthSoft. The geoprocessing tools in 10 run asynchronously, so they're running in the background, so you can see them. Sometimes I forget that they're running, but these, like something like this, shouldn't take that long, and then it'll pop up in a corner when it's done, or you'll get a layer. So here's what they gave us with just not paying too much attention to all the parameters, just using kind of defaults. So it created. This is the grid, right? We can, we can change these intervals here to make it smoother. And let's do the ramp of hues if we have that as an option. And where do we flip it? Flip. Oh, I guess I flipped it already. Let's try that. If we do again, I'm sorry, I'm going fast. Zoom to layer. We've got some outlier. Oh no, this is just because they're so far away. So the ESRI natural neighbor does not do that thing that I like that the Surfer does. It doesn't. The Surfer one does not go and make these huge guesstimates. The ESRI one is trying to say to me, if someone gave me this map, I'd say that they think they know what's going on in this middle part, right? So this is a big. That's right there. Something that I would be aware. You got to be aware of that. That you're going to basically have to do this 4 times. It's not going to help you much as far as being extra productive with facility groups, because you're going to have to run it 4 times unless you want this big gap in the middle. You can always use you could have polygons and clamp out the middle part.
So what if you use the different
yeah, let's see. The Kriging, I mean, there may be other ones that work better, but I didn't even get to the contours themselves. This is just the grid, but let's try it with their Kriging one. There's also the whole geostatistical analyst tool, which is pretty impressive. If you ever done anything with geostatistics, how nicely it's integrated with ArcGIS, but that's definitely beyond the scope of today's talk. So while that runs in the background, so that's the first step. We need to actually create, the contour lines from it. So, so I like Kriging better, I think, that for the ESRI stuff. But still doing, some weirdness with connecting the facilities. Zoom out all the way. So what, yeah, this is the defaults definitely do not work for these facility groups where it's spread out very far, and you have clusters of points. You would need to diddle with this the values basically to create cell size that's small enough for each facility. That's actually where the geostatistical analyst might be better, but it's not something I want to show right now. It's very complicated. But let's go ahead and just contour this so you can see how that works. So we grid it first and then contour. And did we find contour last time? It's contour. They have a nice annotation contour one that'll put the labels actually on the contours, but we'll do the basic one first. We pick our, what's it called? Natural, oh, because natural neighbor, natural EQ12. Contour interval, here they don't let you say default, you gotta kind of guess what it is. That's another thing that I don't like compared to Surfer. Base contour, that's the starting contour. Again, you have to figure out what that is. It's not that hard to do. You can use it. My voice is kind of going. You can use, if you look at this grid here, we can see in the properties, we can see some grid statistics where we've got it going from -8 to 1400. So if we go from 0 to 1400, you're probably not going to end up contouring water levels across your whole facility group. Or you're not going to probably, I wouldn't contour a facility group. It's probably not the best thing to show. I don't think really you're going to be doing that, right? It's too much in between to...
Well, it depends on how close the facilities are.
Yeah. Yeah, if they're just neighbor facilities, then you would do it. But for this one, I hope you understand that it's not appropriate. It's not something you'd want to do, but I'm just showing you kind of the steps that you would take. Yeah, question?
So Mark, what would be, if you had two facilities that were, let's say, this far apart, what would be the best way to see if they were interrelated?
I would do, we'll do that next. Let me do this contour, and then I'd basically do one of the color ranges or pie charts. If you want to see really quick at, all the, to get the signatures at different facilities, the pie charts I think would be really helpful because you can graphically see patterns emerge. That's what I wanted to try. We did that I think last night and saw some patterns on this facility group. So here we had we would go from 0 to 1400. I'm just going to pick 100. I'll pick 20. Again, it's probably not making much sense to do, but these are the steps to use the ESRI contouring tools. So that's running again in the background. So yeah, these are definitely better quality than I remember. Before they were very, like I said, staircasey, if that's the word, jagged little steps. So it's not so bad. It's the data, if this was appropriate to do. Okay, all right. It's tough. All right, so contours done.